The sulfur is dried in huge dumps. Trainloads of this vital mineral are shipped daily. War has turned this state into one of the great industrial areas. But the old Texas is here, too. Beef cattle roam the plains until it's time to separate the calves from the herds. And finally, the cattle march that last mile in the Fort Worth stockyards. Texas sheep contribute twice as much wool as the state next in production. And the sheep, too, march that last mile in Fort Worth to help feed millions. Angora goats supply 85% of the country's mohair. Turkey raising is one of the old standbys. And that Texas climate has produced some whoppers. Baby beef turkeys, running up to 50 pounds. Yes, Texas has done itself proud in wartime, and the people who have made this possible are simply the families of the men from Texas, the mothers and wives, and fathers and brothers. George Nicholas has a son hospitalized in New Caledonia. There are 3 men named Cooper who will recognize mother and dad at work. Millie Bailey carries on with the memory of a son captured on Corregidor. And the same for her husband, Ed Bailey. Mrs. Tom White raised her own son and 2 foster sons on this farm near Paris. All are overseas. All the kids of the Davis family help their mother pick cotton. The son is in the Navy. Raymond Malone, cotton picker, has a son in the Army overseas. Mr. Riggins' son wears the Purple Heart. Otto Stevenson has 5 brothers in the Army, Marines, and Air Corps. And John Taylor also is the only one of 6 brothers who's not in uniform. Jimmy Wingfield, engineer on the big-inch booster pumps, has a Marine brother with the Purple Heart and another brother in the ETO. Aurel Vion, sister of a Navy man. Mrs. Lowry Deney is the wife of a GI overseas. J.O. Stockman, brother of a Navy man. J.R. Cox, switchman, with 2 sons and 3 grandsons in service. 1 son is reported missing. Mrs. H.W. McWilliams has been in war work since Corregidor fell. Her husband was taken prisoner there. And on the Alabama Coshawty Indian Reservation, out of a community population of 380, there are 28 stars in the service flag. The kids don't quite understand what's going on in the world, but they're fascinated by letters from the chief's son, PFC James Celestine of the infantry, who's been fighting an enemy in New Guinea. And the men of the reservation who remain are hard at work in the logging camps. In Austin, the State University campus is a little on the feminine side with so many men away. And at the Capitol building, as everywhere else in the state, the flag of Texas flies beside the stars and stripes. The men from Texas mean it when they say that whenever the United States goes to war, Texas can be counted on to fight right alongside her. It's hard to find a Texan who doesn't claim that his state has the most beautiful girls in the world. Here's what came out of a department store in Dallas. What's the verdict? And what kind of a knucklehead would keep a dish like this waiting? As in other states, church attendance has increased tremendously since Pearl Harbor. Typical of Texas is the ranch of Ed C. Henke, several miles outside Kerrville. 2 sons and 2 daughters were raised here by the Henkes. But now the elder son is in the infantry overseas, and the 2 daughters are married to men who've shipped out. Whenever possible, the 2 daughters visit the ranch to help out a little. But the only regular hand Dad Henke has is his younger son, W.R. After breakfast, Dad and W.R. start the day with the milking chore. A 3rd cow is reserved for W.R.'s pride, a bull calf he's raising for the 4-H club competition. Little Charles Lee, son of the Henke boy overseas, loves to visit Grandma and Grandpa on weekends and get himself involved in everything possible. On the ranch, every day is Easter for Charlie as he tracks down the eggs with Grandma. Charles Lee insists on helping with anything, such as giving Grandpa a lift on feeding the hogs. Meanwhile, Mrs. Pressler, the Henke girl married to a field artillery man, churned some butter with a newfangled gadget that worked automatically till the motor broke and they couldn't get new parts. There's that weekly washing to be taken care of, too. Although it's far from what it used to be when all the kids were growing up, Mrs. Peters, the other Henke daughter who's married to an Air Corps man, helps her mother. And of course, Charles Lee is in there pitching. Dad and W.R. have regular inspection trips to be made, checking on the livestock and the fencing. And while husband and son are away, Mrs. Henke finds that, as always, everybody has forgotten to bring in some wood for the cook stove. She's tried for years to train Dad and all the kids to relieve her of this chore, but she's still doing it herself. The cattle gathering around to feed give Dad Henke a chance to check on their condition. They're in fine shape this year. The sheep, too, look in good health as they come in for salt. It took Texans a long time to convince themselves that a man of honor could raise both cattle and sheep, but the war cinched the argument. W.R. is anxious to have his brother see what he's accomplished with this filly. 3 weeks ago, she was as wild as a cornered bobcat. W.R. broke her all by himself. And Mother, with the food she put up last summer and fall, makes sure that the dried apples are in a prominent place. They won second prize at the Kerrville County Fair. When deer season opens, W.R. is among the first to get his buck. He'll pack it cheerfully for miles, just to see the proud flicker in Dad's eyes when he walks casually up to the house. The family is proud, too, of the way W.R. looks out for the son of the big brother who's overseas, showing him the mysteries of the woods and streams, and never a harsh word from him when little Charles Lee decides the best way to catch fish is to beat them over the head with your fish pole. Sunday finds the Henke family dressed in its best for morning services at Kerrville. They meet other neighbors who talk about their husbands and sons who are away, and they're led in prayer by Reverend Probst. The end of each day finds the family a pretty tired lot, but with that feeling of having worked hard and unselfishly for the common good. And Charles Lee, who hates his bedtime like any other kid and speaks with childish pride of a daddy he worships without remembering, is the best answer the Henkes have as to why the men of Texas, as the men of all states, have left their homes to make sure that the security and freedom of the American family will not be destroyed.